Hello. Today I'm going to tie for you what I'm calling a blowtorch variant. I held off as long as I could, but I'm kind of getting into Euro-Nymphing or long leader or contact nymphing. It's called 1,000 different things, but it all works the same way. Don't scare the fish away with a fly line. So today's fly we're going to do on a size 14, a 320J. It's a jig hook. Got a real small turned up eye on it. And these larger brass rainbow beads, these are leftovers from something else, but they're going to work good on this. I'm going to center them with a little lead-free wire. And I'm going to use my go-to Shuck material, which is from that shoelace. Some Peacock Herl for the body, ribbed with silver Sulky. And then one of the features of this fly is to have those wispy legs or some fuzz hanging around. We're going to do that with CDC. This is a little homemade blend, some pinkish orange dubbing, and hold it all together with black thread. So I've got the hook and the vise, the beads on it. And like I said, these are larger beads. I'm kind of doing different size beads to see if I can get a little deeper. This stuff's been working. I actually just ordered a new rod to do even more of this Euro-Nymphing. So about 5 wraps of that 20 thousandths lead-free wire, a little super glue, and I'm going to work that up into the center of that bead and kind of align it and straighten it. Now when it's centered like this, it's not a slotted bead. I'm not sure it's going to turn the fly over perfectly, but these are leftover materials and they're going to work good enough for me. So here I just tried to wrap that end down, and in the process it broke off even with the back of the bead, or pretty much. So we'll fiddle with this and get that piece out of the way. And start some of our black uni thread. So I said these beads were left over. We were on a river in West Virginia, and there was a guide there kind of fishing on his day off. He didn't have a client with him, and he said his go-to pattern, essentially it was a woolly bugger, and for its bead, it was one of these rainbow colored beads. So when I got home, I ordered some. I didn't buy tungsten. I think they were expensive. So I just kind of opted for the brass version, and they work just fine. We've been back there and caught a few fish on that. Like I said, essentially it's a woolly bugger. So here I'm tying in the Shuck, and if I wouldn't have been so thrifty and trying to use this little piece of shoelace material, it's kind of a poly material. Um, I could have left the longer piece up by the bead and it would have been easier to trim this. So as I fool around and trim those hairs off, I can talk more about this Euro-Nymphing. So I've been through, I tried to do it on standard fly rods for 4 weights, different lengths. I have a couple of 5 weights too, but they're just way too heavy for what we're trying to do. But Pennsylvania, last couple of summers, it's been dry, low, clear, and we end up on spring creeks, and with the hot weather especially, we end up on spring creeks, and those fish are just too spooky. They've seen it all, done it all, and if you give them a hint that you're there, fly line, shadows, have a rod shadow wave over them, they hit the deck and they don't come back and feed for a long time. So I've tied in that silver sulky, and there I'm taking one extra wrap behind the peacock. I feel like if I just wrap over the peacock and start twisting, a lot of times it breaks off. So if I do that extra wrap behind, it doesn't break as often. Maybe it's just a mental thing for me. And here I'm just twisting, kind of making my own peacock and thread chenille. Yeah, it's a nice, easy way to do it. And on these smaller flies, and you want to keep the body relatively thin. Not sure this is an ideal example of that, but I didn't use a loop of thread in peacock, which I sometimes or often do. So I'm going to need a little more, so we're going to come back and do a little more twisting. Get about another inch of it and get those last couple of wraps in. So oddly enough, I'm not sure this fly represents anything, but it could represent everything. Um, that little orange colored shuck, orange is good in the fall, right? We have orange caddis, October caddis that kind of come off. And then you have the peacock, which anytime I'm in caddis water, peacock body Herl or peacock Herl bodies seem to work good for us. So I'm going to come back and rib it, give it a little bit of flash here. Now only about 4 wraps. I don't want too much of this. It segments it a little bit as well, which I think doesn't hurt. So here I'm fiddling around between the camera and the fly, and I make this look much harder than it is. I'd shoot this at a distance and back the camera out of the way. I could probably buzz through these. And this is the first one I've tied. I went on to make about 6 more, and I should have filmed one of those, but I already had this captured, so we went with it. Now here we are going to use a loop, and I'm also going to use a tool that I picked up a long time ago. It kind of helps you use that CDC feather. So the tools were from Mark Pettigene, and he does a lot with CDC, and he sells this little block, this clamp, and the idea is you set your feather up and you get it in the block, and then you transfer that to he sells some plastic clips with this as well, but I have my Swiss CDC metal clip that I kind of got used to, and it's sitting out, so that's what I used in this case. Now here I'm kind of making a in some flies they call it a complex twist, or you put a couple different materials in. So I have a little bit of that fuzzy dubbing in the center, trying to get that piece of monofilament lined up with the stem, and I'll pull it down in the block. So you could do this a bunch of different ways. It doesn't have to be with one of these blocks, but I had this thing and I haven't used it a lot, so I kind of dug it out and went ahead. So off camera, I grabbed that with that metal CDC, Swiss CDC tool. I'm going to trim away the stem of the CDC feather and some of that excess dubbing. And it's not exactly what I would want. Like I said, this was the first one. That's the other Swiss CDC tool I use. It's my go-to dubbing spinner for now. The other thing is it's pretty long, so if I don't throw it over my finger and spin it, it ends up hitting the base of the vise. So here I kind of have that between the thread and on the way out. One quick movement, and I took a little of the dubbing with me, but that's not a bad mix for a first couple wraps. I'm going to spin that up and we'll wrap that around. And I know you're thinking, oh, that's not enough and it's pretty sparse, but I'm going to show you something here. So I paused the camera for a minute, but I just let that hang and unspin, and now I'll come back at it with the rest of that dubbing and some more CDC. And I'm still pretty shaky with this. I think if I learned to brace my finger on the hook or on the vise or something, I wouldn't be. And 2 cups of coffee probably didn't help either. But we took another bite at it. We've got some of those wild hairs sticking out there. Pull them all back and throw that extra wrap or 2 on there, and I think it's going to work just fine. But I left all this in. Like I said, I could have filmed a nice clean version of this. The next 5 or 6 that I made, they went a lot smoother. Okay, so there was something too. My thread broke up near the spool, and I'm not sure why. So I grabbed it with a set of Hackle pliers. It's hanging down there with the CDC tool. And I'm going to start my thread again and take all 3 pieces, the loop, the broken off piece, and the end of what I just tied in, and get them fastened down. So it's not an emergency. You can save it. Here I noticed that I went back a little far on that one wrap, so I'm just pulling it back up front. And then we'll trim everything off, and barring any more catastrophes here, I put a little head cement on the thread, Sally Hansen's hard as nails, come in with the whip finishing tool. And I get a 5-turn whip finish right behind that bead. So, and to be honest, if you wouldn't have seen the mishaps as they can as I went along, that looks pretty good. So I put it in the box and I made 4 or 5 better ones. Have a nice row of these guys. I think I'll use them as a bottom fly. It'll get down there and bounce the bottom, and we'll see what we can do. So I hope this helps you out. Sorry I was away for a little while. And if you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. Until next time, be safe.